civil trial lawyer Josh Wright from the firm of Hollis, Wright & Couch, and Alabama's 13 host David Lamb. The attorneys answer your tough legal questions straight ahead.
Hello and welcome into the attorneys. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. Our goal with this program each and every week is to deal with matters of interest to you and to help you and answer some of your legal questions. That's why we put the show on each and every week, and we invite you to be a part of it. That is a key part of the show, is your involvement in it. So throughout the evening, you'll see ways for you to call, text, or email us, and I'll be reading many of your questions and presenting them right to our panel of experts. So go ahead, when you see that information or you have a question, something that said triggers that, then get that right to us. Want to welcome in from the firm of Hollis, Wright & Couch, Steve Couch. Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you, David. Great to be back.
Glad you're here. And again, I like what we're going to do tonight, because going to answer some questions about a process that I'll just speak for myself. I don't really understand all that well, and that's the jury process.
That's right. What I'm hoping to accomplish tonight is kind of educate people and inform them about what some of the history behind the jury process, what goes into it, what it's like going through there based on what I've seen and what I've heard from others. And for this show tonight, I've asked a good friend of mine and a very accomplished lawyer, Bo Bruner, who's with the Belt Law Firm here in Birmingham, to come on. Bo and I have done a lot of research into the jury system, the history behind it, and we've spent a lot of time, and especially Bo has, in front of juries. Bo, thanks for coming on. We really
glad to be
it.
here, Steve.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm just, maybe a good place to start. Let's kind of go with an overview from both of you on just the process and the jury process, and maybe some background of the jury system and about the topic tonight.
Okay, I'll start. As far as the jury process, well, let me say this. The jury system as it's set up today in the United States, this is something that's strange to a lot of people. If you ever meet somebody from abroad, from a different country, what happens here doesn't happen everywhere. In fact, I think it's United States and Canada may make limited use of juries, but countries around the world, they don't have the system of justice that we have. Typically, there is a person or a few people on a panel who will decide controversies between folks. And United States, as we all know, we have the jury system, and that's something that came over when this country started. And the framers of our Constitution, if you ever kind of, I'm a history buff, David, and if you do some readings, what you'll learn is, look, when the Constitution started, they didn't know everything that they wanted in there, but one thing for sure that they wanted in there was the right to trial by jury. And I think that's from the history that this country came from over in England, when it was a person making a decision for controversy. So I think the jury system grew out of the democratic idea that, regular folks hearing information, seeing witnesses can make good, commonsensical decisions when you're judging what the facts are. Now, in the development of that, of course, we've got the Constitution. Then there's, within that, there was the Sixth Amendment right to a jury trial in a criminal case. Seventh Amendment gives everybody the right to a jury in a civil matter. And the jury system itself, that's kind of where everybody gets in a courtroom and they hear a controversy. Lawyers for one side or individuals, they can do it themselves. Hear one set of facts, the other side does the same thing, and they decide what's accurate, what the truth is. Bo, you want to add?
Absolutely. You look at what was written at the founding of the country. They speak a lot of the jury as being an example of direct democracy, as opposed to electing people and putting them in a position to make decisions for us. The community could have put a group of people in a courtroom, listen to a controversy, and exercise the right to vote in the direct way, and enforcing the community's standards directly.
Okay, let's kind of go through some of what I think are pretty common questions, but some of them I'm looking forward to hearing myself. But how do I know if I'm eligible for jury duty?
Well, eligibility for jury duty, Alabama has some specifics. In Alabama, you got to be at least 19 years of age or older. Got to be a resident of the state, and specifically the county in which you're serving as a juror. You've got to be able to understand instructions in the English language. You cannot have been convicted of a felony without your civil rights having been restored, and you have to have that done through the Board of Pardons and Paroles in Montgomery. And you've got to be physically and mentally able to serve as a juror.
Okay. Bo, how do they get my name for jury service?
I believe what they're doing now is they go off the driver's license list and the voting rolls.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's how they're doing it in Alabama. They
right.
select from that and I believe select at random as to who gets a jury summons.
Yeah, that's right. And then once you get these little things in the mail, hey, you've been summoned to jury duty, you'll go down and report. And just because you get a summons still doesn't mean you're eligible. There's a lot of questions that are asked when 400 or something folks get in a room. Typically, a presiding judge, or whichever judge's turn it is in that county, will ask a lot of those qualifying questions. Can everybody here understand the English language? Can you understand the written, spoken word, etc.? Are you physically, mentally able to do this? They'll ask those qualifying questions. So just because you get a summons and you go down there, which you have to do, doesn't mean you're going to be quote unquote qualified to serve on any given jury panel.
Questions about the jury process, would love to get those from you, the information on the screen. Just email those to us, call or text them, and we'll get to just as many of those as we can. A question we have here: why do I have to provide information about my race and gender?
Good question. Go ahead.
Well, there are certain constitutional guarantees that the Supreme Court has written about, has ruled, that now apply to jury service. We didn't always have the Constitution interpreted like that, but
right.
over the last 50 or 60 years, they have said that not only the litigants, the parties before the court, but jurors themselves have a constitutional right to not be discriminated against for purposes of race or sex and being able to sit on a jury.
Okay.
And that's why you have to provide that information, so that the attorneys in the court keep track of that and make sure that the parties aren't do anything discriminatory in how they're selecting that jury, not picking it by race or sex.
Yeah, let me piggyback off that for a second. I mean, what you're trying to do in the jury process is, the ultimate goal is they're trying to get a fair, balanced cross-section of any given community.
And who is they? You say they are trying, the attorneys?
Well, what the courts are when you're trying to enforce the mandates of the Constitution as they've been interpreted. So you're trying to get a cross-section of the community.
Okay.
So just because they ask race, gender, it's not because they're trying to discriminate against them. What they're trying to do is make sure this is, how many women do we have? How many men do we have? How many African Americans? How many, that type of thing. What they're trying to do is get a mixed pool of folks in there from which the ultimate jury will be selected from. I mean, there was a day when if you were African American, you couldn't serve on a jury in Alabama. In fact, it wasn't long ago where if you were a woman, you couldn't serve on a jury in Alabama. Fortunately, times have changed, we've progressed, and now that right's extended to everybody. But I mean, I'm glad that they asked that, because what we're trying to do, again, is once the jury's impaneled, or the prospective jury, they're trying to say, does this group of people represent the demographics of whatever community is going to hear this case, given it the city of Birmingham, Jefferson County, or over in Etowah County, or any other county in the state.
Okay. All right. We're time for us to head to break. The other side of the break, I'd love to get into this question. Someone wants to know about how they can be excused from jury service. Okay. So we'll hear from a couple of pros about that. As we head to break, a reminder, you can call, text, email us. That information is right there. Also, find the firm of Hollis, Wright & Couch. Just search that term, the firm name on Facebook. You'll find it there. Follow them on Twitter as well, Hollis_Wright. Stay tuned. More of your questions get answered by the expert attorneys after this quick break.
I'm Josh Wright with the law firm of Hollis, Wright & Couch, and thanks for watching The Attorneys on Alabama's 13. Now, we hope you, a friend, or a loved one never need legal counsel for a case. But if you do, the goal of the show is simple: provide answers and legal counsel when you need it the most. Your call to the show is free, so if you have questions specific to this show or related to other civil legal matters, call, email, or text us to talk with one of our lawyers. You can also follow us on Facebook or Twitter to learn about important legal news that could affect you or your family. Or simply contact us by going to alabamas13.com and click on the Attorneys link. We know your time is valuable, so thank you for spending it with us and for watching The Attorneys right here on Alabama's 13.
Process, but we're ask. You can ask it tonight. Plenty of ways for you to get in touch with us. Call, text, email, that information on the screen throughout the evening. A question that we got in, we were talking about making sure that folks are not discriminated upon in serving on a jury. A question here from someone, how can they be excused from a jury?
Well, when the court summons folks for jury service, one of the things they will ask is who has a hardship, who absolutely cannot. And I believe sometimes you can even call in when you get the summons, and if you have sufficient hardship, they'll excuse you ahead of time. But the court will inquire into that, and typically, I think a lot of what folks don't understand is it's a very formal process, the court questioning potential jurors. They're actually under oath, just like the witnesses are.
Okay.
And so the judge will inquire about that hardship, and given the needs of the system, how many jurors they need, what the hardship is, you may be able to get out of it like that.
Okay.
I guess, to piggyback off that, I've seen these cases where people, they get a summons and some of them throw it away, and for some folks this is kind of like a game. How do I get off of jury service? So I'd love to expand off that if I could. Okay. Number one, I'd say who would want to. I mean, where else can you have a direct impact on what goes on in your community short of being on a jury? I mean, I guess the next most immediate thing I can think of is maybe voting. You want to talk about an immediate impact, and that's serving on a jury. To get off of jury service, like Bo said, you've got to show a hardship. You've got to show some physical or mental inability to serve on a jury. You've got to, show, Judge, I've got this familial obligation, family obligation that I can't get out of. I can't get a babysitter. It's going to take a number of things for you to not be eligible to serve on a jury. And candidly, there's a lot of people who try to avoid it. I've read a lot about this, and I don't know if you heard this thing in the news. This lady up north she actually faked a mental defect. She dressed funny. She walked in front of the court. And then she goes home and gets on YouTube and makes a video, and like a joke, how she got at it. Well, she's being prosecuted now by her local prosecutor, and candidly, if you intentionally fail to serve on a jury, avoid it, if you will, there are penalties that come with that.
I mean, you talk about being a civic duty, it's really a civic opportunity, really,
correct,
and a privilege. What types of cases are heard by jurors?
Well, in Alabama and in most states, certainly you've got the right to trial by jury via the 7th Amendment, U.S. Constitution, in civil cases, like I talked about. In criminal cases, it's constitutionally mandated. Now, just because you've got the right to a jury trial doesn't mean you have to have a jury trial. In fact, in civil cases, when you're filing a case, the initial case form, you can demand a jury trial. Okay. Or you can say, no, I would rather have a bench trial. And that's where the judge is the judge of not only the facts but the law. And when you have a jury, it's the jurors are the decider of the facts. But any civil or criminal case, at least in the United States, can have a jury if you desire one.
Okay. And typically they do put limits on the amount of money sought for civil trials. So say you have a smaller case, you may bring that in small claims court or district court where a jury's not involved. But anything over a certain amount, you have that right to a jury trial. Okay,
now the question, are jurors paid for jury service?
They are. I can't remember exactly what it is right now. I think it's $12 or something like that.
Somewhere between 10 and 15.
Plus some compensation for mileage. And one thing that I know, at least here in Jefferson County, they are doing is they're asking folks to waive that compensation. Okay. Because of the status of our finances in the state right now, when folks do waive that, I know it's a big help to those folks down at the courthouse.
Is an employer required? Are they required to pay you if you take a week off to serve on the jury?
You want to respond to
that? Yeah, they are. You can't be fired for being on a jury.
Okay.
If you are a full-time employee, your employer by law has to pay you your regular wages. And in addition to that, this while you're serving on jury duty, In addition to that, you get you're entitled to the compensation rate that Bo referred to earlier, somewhere between $10 and $15. You can't be fired for having to serve on a jury,
regardless of the length.
Regardless of the length. Now, you will if you get off when you go to jury service, you may be there one day and you may just be sitting around. They say come back at 9 o'clock the next morning. That's when you get assigned to go to a courtroom. You may or may not be picked. If you don't get picked, if you're excused and you're not serving on a jury, I'll say this: you can't go fishing.
Right.
You got to go back to work.
Okay.
All right. But if you're on jury duty and you're in service, you cannot be terminated from your job for serving on it. And if you're a full-time employee, they have to continue to pay you your regular wages.
Okay. And a question here: how is that communicated to the employer? But if you're called for jury duty, you can just let your employer know, hey, I got the form, and maybe bring it and prove it?
Well, the first thing I do, or I tell people to do, is if you got a jury summons, it's a little card you'll get that says, hey, you got to come down to the courthouse at a certain date, certain time. Show that to your employer to tell them where you're going to be. Then again, if you don't get selected to be on a jury, you need to go back to work. Now, if your employer requires something more than that, fine. Tell the court. Raise your hand when you're there and say, Judge, I need some type of written evidence from my employer, and he'll get his secretary to type you something up.
Even if it goes on for months, would that fall into what you were talking about with the hardship category? If a trial does go on for months, and if you own your own business, that seems like that could possibly be a hardship issue.
It could, and I've seen that come up. You know, you own your own business, or maybe you have something particular coming up at work. And that will be one of the things that a court could grant a hardship for.
Right.
And it's important to know for those hardships, they're not just giving you a pass. They're saying, well, this may not be the right case for you.
Right.
Maybe you'd be better to go to another courtroom, hear a case that doesn't last as long, or maybe it'd be better for you to come back to court in a couple of weeks, a couple of months.
All right. Another good question, just about the responsibilities of a juror. Are there some kind of, I don't know, hard, fast rules, but what are the responsibilities of a juror?
Well, I'd say generally it is you've got to be attentive, be prompt, show up at court on time, be attentive, listen to the evidence, keep an open mind, and the judge will typically give these instructions as the case is going on and even before it starts. You have a responsibility not to discuss the case during the breaks, lunchtime, as the trial is going on. In fact, you can't even deliberate the case until the deliberations start, which is when the final closing arguments are done and you've received your jury charges. And you all go back to the room, elect a foreperson, and that's when you start deliberating. But be prompt, be attentive, be able to understand, have the ability to recall information. You can take notes if you want to. You're not required to, but jurors can take notes, and just be able to be fair and keep an open mind and be able to make a decision and work with other folks, I would think.
Yeah. And as a juror, you have certain rights. You have the right to hear all the evidence. You have the right to hear the law from the judge. You have the right to make sure that the other jurors follow the law when they decide the case. And so that's why when jurors eventually go back there and deliberate, they can go ask the judge about the law. They can bring up problems they're having in deliberations to the judge. But they have not only those obligations, but they also have those rights, because it's a very important thing we do in society.
You know, as far as nobody can make you, piggybacking off what Bo said, nobody can make a juror participate in a verdict that goes against the law. They've got the right to be on a jury that follows the law. So if a juror's back there and they just refuse to follow it, you can knock on the door and send a note out to the bailiff.
All right. That's going to wrap up this segment of the show. One more final segment of the attorneys coming right up as we head to break. Reminders again, ways for you to get in touch with us. Quite a few minutes left, so you can get in, get your question into us. Find the firm of Hollis, Wright & Couch on Facebook by searching the firm name, and on Twitter by looking for Hollis_Wright. Stay tuned. The final segment of the attorneys will be coming up right next.
From all of us at the law firm of Hollis, Wright & Couch, we're glad to have you here with us every Sunday night on Alabama's 13th. This week we're discussing the jury process as well as jury duty. There's a little history behind jury duty. We'll talk about it along with what to do when you receive a summons and what to expect when you participate in the jury process. In the past, serving on a jury was not always a universal right. fact, at one time, only white males who owned property were allowed to serve on a jury. Fortunately, times have changed, and this fundamental right is now extended to all citizens. As a juror, you serve as the conscience of your community and set the standards of acceptable conduct where you live. If you receive a summons for jury service, immediately notify your employer so that you may be excused from work. If you're released from jury duty during the week, you must return to work. You will be given a certificate of jury service to take to your employer as proof of your service. You're entitled to wages also. In fact, full-time employees are entitled to their usual pay while serving as a juror, as well as the rate of compensation paid by the state of Alabama. By law, you cannot be terminated from employment for serving as a juror. Please remember your call, email, or text to the attorneys is free. All of us at Hollis, Wright & Couch want to help answer your questions on real issues you face. Remember, a competent lawyer will respond to each and every question you send in. That's our pledge and promise to you. Thanks again for watching Attorneys here on Alabama's 13.
Welcome back into the Attorneys, talking about the jury process. Hopefully we're getting to many of the questions that you have. There's still a few minutes for you to get those to us. You can call, text, or email them to us, and we'll do our best to pass it along to our panel of experts. Bo Bruner joining us with Steve Couch at the firm Hollis, Wright & Couch. And Bo, from you, we're talking about the jury process, serving on a jury. What sort of feedback have you gotten from folks who have served on a jury about the process and the experience?
Well, I think that predominantly it's been positive, what I've heard. Talking to jurors after trials, or even speaking with family members and friends that have served on the jury. What's often seen at the outset as an inconvenience and a burden, I think people really get to appreciate when they go through the experience themselves.
Yeah.
Because you really realize once you go through it, how much goes into the presentation of a case to the jury.
Right.
How much work the judge does, the lawyers do, and how important it is to the parties and the community that juror comes from.
Right.
And I think when people realize that, they really are proud of their service. I've told juries, and I've heard it said that, you know, you're going to make a lot of important decisions in your life. Who to marry, where to live, what you do for a career. And those are decisions that affect you. But as jurors, you're going to be making a decision that's just as important, that's got every bit as much significance, but it's for someone else and it's for your community.
Right.
And I think people appreciate being able to do that.
Yeah, I've heard people say, you know, I didn't realize how important this was, and you know, I've heard from many people actually that, you know, I see the system working now, and I actually got to participate in it. I've heard stuff like this. I see it now. It's bigger than just me. I've seen some jurors get very emotional in cases when they have, in following the law, they've had to find against a defendant who they may have liked, or a plaintiff that they may have liked. You know, so it can be a very emotional and solemn experience, and it's something that for the folks who go through it, they appreciate having gone through it. A
question from a viewer: a summons to serve on a grand jury. My neighbor told me she served on a petit jury, two terms maybe we can get to. What's the difference there?
Grand jury is mostly used in criminal cases. Petit jury that we've been talking about all night, that's the 12 folks who get in and hear that case. Grand jury is a little different. No jury, no defense lawyer, that's the prosecutor get in, and they present whether or not an event is indictable under the criminal code of Alabama. There's no defense lawyer. They say, here's the evidence, and you're listening to a grand jury, a larger collection of people, and they decide whether or not it's an indictable offense under Alabama criminal law. Typically service on that, it's not going to be your one-day trial or two-week trial or whatever. That's going to be for a period of maybe 6 months, maybe longer, but it's only a couple days a month.
Okay, and you said the correct pronunciation is petite?
Well, I'm from South Alabama. That's what I said.
We'll go with that then. You're the experts. One final, just time for one more question. After I reported for jury service, it took 3 days before I actually sat on a jury. Why does it take so long?
Well, they start out with a big group of people reporting. In Jefferson County, I think it can be as big as several hundred, if I'm not mistaken. And they may have, during that jury week, a dozen trials going on, and so the court's doing the best they can, and they really do. When you see it from our side, you realize how hard these people work and how much they put into putting jurors in courtrooms and getting people where they need to go. But just the nature of it means it's going to take time sometimes.
Yeah. And a lot of times I think this serves a purpose. Just showing up serves a purpose, because, I mean, I was in Etowah County a couple of weeks ago on a trial, and it was something that 400 people were summoned, 99 qualified, and then they started parsing the groups of folks out to the different courtrooms. And it amazed me, because you know, my case was on down the docket, but it was amazing just by the venire, the group of folks that goes into an individual courtroom from which the jury is going to be selected, maybe 40 or 50. Just them walking in there made those cases resolve. So it's interesting when you've got the parties staring the potential jury in the eye. That makes the process work. In fact, our legal system, the way it's set up, it could not work without people serving on a jury. And it's another reason you've got to show up, and you really need to be doing your part, because it's the people who serve that make it work.
And just 1 minute left, Bo. Just enough time for a final thought?
Well, I just hope we've had people maybe appreciate or look forward to jury service if they might have it. This is very important. It's one of the primary ways we enforce the standards in our communities, and without them doing that, we'd be in a lot of trouble.
Steve?
Well, just piggybacking off of what he said, you know, I can't think of another way where an individual can affect what goes on in his or her community more immediately than serving on a jury of 12.
Yes, great stuff. Gentlemen, appreciate it so much. Great conversation tonight. Hope you enjoyed it as well. Love to hear from you. Still time for you to get in touch with the firm of Hollis, Wright & Couch. Here's how to do that. They'll answer every email. Appreciate you being with us. We'll see you next week, everybody.